Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. First, a terrifying attack at a Pennsylvania hospital has left a police officer and the gunman dead after a hostage situation.
When he came out, Mr. Diogenes Archangel Ortiz came out holding at gunpoint a member of the UPMC staff who was also had her hands tied with the aforementioned zip ties. Holding her at gunpoint, coming out into the hallway, the officers, left with no recourse, did open fire and did shoot and kill Diogenes Archangel Ortiz.
Japan and the Philippines are set to further deepen their defense ties amid an increasingly severe security environment in the Indo-Pacific. That, according to Japanese Defense Minister General Nakatani, announcing it today during a high-level meeting in Manila with Philippine Defense Minister Gilberto Teodoro. At an annual forum with top government and military officials, President Volodymyr Zelensky made a bold declaration. Answering questions from the media, he said he's prepared to step down if it means securing peace in Ukraine.
If it's about peace in Ukraine and you really want me to leave my position, I am ready to do that in exchange for peace. Secondly, I can exchange it for NATO membership, if there is such an opportunity. I'll do it immediately without a long conversation about it. I am focused on Ukraine's security today and not in 20 years. I don't plan to be in power for decades. Therefore, that's my aim and my dream.
And the news starts now. First, a terrifying attack at a Pennsylvania hospital has left a police officer and the gunman dead after a hostage situation in the intensive care unit. Take a look. Terror struck UPMC Memorial Hospital in York County when an armed man entered carrying zip ties and took multiple hostages in the ICU. Hospital workers were seen running for their lives as police responded to the emergency. York County District Attorney Tim Barker describes how the incident began.
Between 10:35 a.m., approximately that time, and 11:13 a.m., an incident occurred here at UPMC Memorial Hospital that involved an individual by the name of Diogenes Archangel Ortiz. His date of birth 11/4/75. This individual entered the hospital and he entered carrying with him a bag that did include a handgun and zip ties. That becomes important for what he did later on. He went straight to the ICU, and in the ICU, this individual went and held hostage members of the UPMC staff. In total, he wound up discharging his firearm and struck 3 members of the UPMC staff. One was a doctor who was grazed, the other was a nurse and a custodian who are in stable condition at this time.
The situation escalated when police arrived. Barker explains.
When he came out, Mr. Diogenes Archangel Ortiz came out holding at gunpoint a member of the UPMC staff who was also had her hands tied with the aforementioned zip ties. Holding her at gunpoint, coming out into the hallway, the officers, left with no recourse, did open fire and did shoot and kill Diogenes Archangel Ortiz. During the course of the armed confrontation that was caused by Mr. Archangel Ortiz, there were 3 officers who were struck.
In the exchange of gunfire, Officer Andrew Duarte of the West York Police Department made the ultimate sacrifice. 2 other officers were wounded but are in stable condition. The district attorney emphasized the officers' heroic actions.
Reviewing all of that evidence, it is absolutely clear and beyond any and all doubt that the officers were justified in taking their action and using deadly force. Quite frankly, they needed to use deadly force because by doing so, they potentially saved even more lives, even as they lost one of their own.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro visited the hospital after the shooting, praising Officer Duarte and his fellow officers for their courage in saving lives. The district attorney concluded with an emotional appeal.
Tonight, we pray for this community, and especially for the Duarte family. A life cut short, but a life of service and meaning and purpose. And I offer my blessings and that of my wife, Lori, our First Lady, our family, and the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We pray for strength for this community. We pray for healing for this community. And we pray for the family of Officer Duarte.
And here's the latest from the Indo-Pacific. Japan and the Philippines are ramping up their defense cooperation in response to growing security concerns in the region. Japanese Defense Minister General Nakatani and his Filipino counterpart, Gilberto Teodoro, met in Manila to discuss regional security, including the ongoing maritime tensions in the East and South China Seas.
We were able to share the recognition with Defense Secretary Teodoro that we will further deepen cooperation among Japan, Australia, and the Philippines, as well as Japan, the United States, and the Philippines. Japan is determined to continue to do its utmost to strengthen Japan-Philippines ties and to ensure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region.
The promotion of a free and open Indo-Pacific, a free and open South China Sea and East Sea, in accordance with generally accepted principles of international law, is a shared initiative. And we share also the common cause of resisting any unilateral attempt to reshape the global order without the consent of the participants of this global order and the attempt to reshape international law by force.
At an annual forum with top government and military officials, President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking in his native tongue, made a bold declaration. Answering questions from the media, he said he's prepared to step down if it means securing peace in Ukraine. Now, Zelensky also expressed a desire to see former President Trump play a more active role for Ukraine, not just as a mediator between Kiev and Moscow. His remarks come on the eve of the third anniversary of the war between Ukraine and Russia. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
This painful anniversary has been marked in a number of ways. Special lighting illuminated the cemetery in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv on Sunday in a tribute to the victims of the war on the eve of the anniversary. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 45,000 people have died in the fighting so far. In Brussels, European Union buildings were lit up in the colors of the Ukrainian flag on Sunday. Thousands of protesters gathered in Paris, chanting anti-Putin and anti-Trump slogans. And protesters in support of Ukraine rallied in Toronto, Canada, that event drawing hundreds of demonstrators. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, Zelensky told a news conference that Ukraine needs the U.S. to be a partner, not a mediator between Kyiv and Moscow. And Zelensky has conditions if Ukraine grants the U.S. access to its minerals in return for future support in the war. He says the deal should include American troops being deployed in Ukraine as a security measure.
У мене логіка тоді була наступна. Якщо ви вважаєте, що економічна угода є частиною
My
гарантії
logic was the
безпеки,
following.
то чому б вам,
If you believe that the economic
там, де
deal is a part of
будуть
the security
присутні інтереси
guarantees,
вашого бізнесу, то
then
чому
why can
там
there
не
not
може
be
бути
your boots on the
ваших
ground where you
boots
have
on
your
the
business
ground?
interests?
Ну,
Isn't it
логічно.
logical?
Мені здається.
To me it seems logical. It seems to me so.
Тобто такий
I
пас,
said that to the United
я
States,
зробив
but we did not
Сполучених
discuss it
Штатів,
yet as we
також
did
ще
not receive their
не обговорювали з
response.
ними, не отримали назад відповідь.
Responding to U.S. President Trump's remarks last week that he's a dictator and should call an election, Zelensky said he wouldn't hesitate to step down in return for peace in Ukraine.
If it's about peace in Ukraine and you really want me to leave my position, I am ready to do that in exchange for peace. Secondly, I can exchange it for NATO membership, if there is such an opportunity. I'll do it immediately without a long conversation about it. I am focused on Ukraine's security today and not in 20 years. I don't plan to be in power for decades. Therefore, that's my aim and my dream.
The country also heard from its military spy chief, who says Russia is getting large-scale support from North Korea. Kirilo Budanov says as well as thousands of troops, North Korea is supplying about half the bullets Moscow needs to keep the military's guns loaded.
Не можна в цьому аспекті не згадати про їх вже тепер.
I need to mention their Russian strategic ally North Korea, which covers 50% of all frontline needs in ammunition. 50% of ammunition at the frontline originate from North Korea. They also started large-scale supply of weapons, including 170mm self-propelled howitzers and 240mm multiple rocket launch systems.
Та 240-мм реактивну систему залпового вогню.
As the war enters its fourth year, the fighting continues to take a toll on civilians. Ordinary Ukrainians, people trying to survive in their war-torn country, express feelings like these. This woman, she's a neurology nurse. Her name is Maria Pelchakovska. She says she just wants to be able to wake up without hearing air raid sirens. She says she wants the occupiers to leave Ukrainian land. Hennady Yudavenko is a war vet, lost a leg in the fighting, and he fears soon after a ceasefire, the whole nation will perish. But he says he'll continue to fight to liberate Ukraine. Kharkiv firefighter Turgat Abbasov says even after the fighting ends, he will not be calm. He says that's because the Russians are close, and there's no trust in them anymore. And that lack of trust is why there is unlikely to be a quick end to this war. Ukraine and other European countries fear that if Russia succeeds even a little bit in this conflict, its aggression will continue with invasions of other nations. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
And tonight we dive into the evolving tactical dynamics of the Russia-Ukraine war. A distinguished panel moderated by Colonel Scott Pence, U.S. Army Fellow, and featuring Ukrainian parliamentarian Colonel Roman Kostenkos, explored critical battlefield developments. In an exclusive segment, former U.S. Army Europe Commander, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, highlights what he sees as Ukraine's biggest strategic challenge.
The biggest challenge, I think, is confidence in Ukraine, because they've got to be wondering, what is the United States going to do? What is the rest of Europe going to do? Or are they going to be traded away for some grand deal? Or are we going to commit to helping them either defeat Russia, which is entirely within our ability to do if we have the political will, or are we going to force them to accept some kind of a settlement for the sake of peace, to stop the fighting as we hear. So the biggest challenge for them is to help convince the Trump administration and other European governments why it's in our interest to help them to defeat Russia.
But what about North Korea? Lieutenant General Hodges doesn't hold back on that front either.
That's the North Koreans are probably the most unwoke army in the world, and yet they are being hammered by Ukrainians. I've always thought that the best organizations and best institutions and the best units were learning organizations that were able to adapt quickly and could learn and put those lessons into effect. And I don't see that in the culture of the North Koreans, and frankly, in the average Russian unit, I don't see it either, which is not to say that every Ukrainian unit is flawless and perfect, far from it. But I think that the Russians never intended to use the North Koreans for anything except as additional fodder that can do a gazillion push-ups. So I'm wondering, how does the North Korean government look at this? as long as the Russians are paying them whatever the agreement was on actual money or technology or cheap energy, whatever it is, as long as that keeps coming. I don't imagine Kim Jong-un is going to shed a lot of tears for soldiers that are killed. But we know so little about what goes on inside North Korea. I can't predict how this goes in the future. I do see opportunity for us, though. What a great time to launch a big SNAP exercise in South Korea with the U.S. and ROK Army troops and others to remind Kim Jong-un about the southern half of the peninsula. And so the more ammunition he sends away, the more troops he sends away to Russia, increases his vulnerability. Not that we're ever going to attack, but he should be worried that we might. And I think at the strategic level, I hope and I imagine that people are considering how can we do that would also, by the way, undermine what Russia is doing.
The U.S. and Ukraine are working on a deal that could give America valuable rights to Ukraine's rare minerals. President Trump weighed in, and here's what he had to say.
We got to talk about something very important. The war between Russia and Ukraine. People are being killed, mostly young men, mostly Russian and Ukrainian men, at levels you've never seen before. Thousands of people a week. And I've spoken to President Putin, and I think that thing is going to end, but it's got to end. It's a horrible, horrible thing to watch. I'm dealing with President Zelensky. I'm dealing with President Putin. I'm trying to get the money back or secured, because, Europe has given $100 billion. The United States has given $350 billion because we had a stupid, incompetent president and administration. 350. But here's worse. Europe gave it in the form of a loan. They get their money back. We gave it in the form of nothing. So I want them to give us something for all of the money that we put up. And I'm going to try and get the war settled. And I'm going to try and get all that death ended. So we're asking for rare earth and oil, anything we can get.
The U.S. is seeking payback for the billions in aid it sent Ukraine since the war with Russia began 3 years ago. Meanwhile, Ukraine is hoping for continued American support as part of a broader effort to end the conflict.
Але у мене питання, скажіть логічне, і мені на нього ніхто не може відповісти.
I have a logical question to which no one can give me a response.
Продають зброю Ізраїлю.
When the United States of America sell weapons to Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, do they earn 100% of profit? It's all right, I simply want a dialogue with President Trump. I think I am right to want a dialogue.
Я хочу діалогу.
I don't sign a document that 10 generations of Ukrainians will pay for.
Будуть виплачувати 10 поколінь українців.
His comments come after a week of sharp exchanges, including his rejection of a Trump proposal that would have given the U.S. 50% ownership of Ukraine's rare earth minerals like lithium, titanium, and graphite, essential for things like electric car batteries and wind turbines. Not long ago, Trump called Zelensky a dictator and said Ukraine should never have started the war. Remember, this all started when Russia invaded in 2022. But now tensions between the two leaders appear to be slowly easing. And in Trump's words,
we get nothing, so we're getting our money back. We're going to get our money back because it's not fair. It's just not fair. And we will see, but I think we're pretty close to a deal, and we better be close to a deal.
the Kremlin said today that Russia was pressing France over security measures following explosions at the Russian consulate building in Marseille, which Moscow said appeared to be an act of terrorism. 2 projectiles were thrown at the perimeter wall of Russia's consulate in the southern French port city of Marseille on Monday, one of which exploded, according to a French security source. It wasn't immediately clear if the projectiles cleared the wall. BFM TV said the projectiles were Molotov cocktails and that they landed in the consulate's garden. Russia demanded a full French investigation and said the incident looked like an act of terrorism, according to its state news agency, TASS. No one was injured, the security source said. Consulate staff were kept indoors and police set up a security perimeter around the consulate. The incident in the southern French city took place on the third anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war. Conservative victory and historic surge by the far right have reshaped German politics today as Friedrich Merz heads toward the chancellorship, while the anti-immigrant AfD party claims second place, results that could reshape both domestic policy and Germany's role in Europe.
The conservative Christian Democrats won Germany's national election on Sunday, putting leader Friedrich Merz, who has no prior experience in office, on track to become chancellor of Europe's largest economy. And in a historic showing, the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, won roughly 20% of the vote, marking the first time since World War II that a far-right party has come in second in a German national election.
Wir haben ein historisches Ergebnis eingefahren.
We have achieved a historic result. We have never been stronger in the federal government. We have become the second strongest force as Alternative for Germany, and we have now firmly established ourselves as a People's Party.
Und ich muss eins sagen, unsere Hand.
And I have to say one thing. Our hand will always be outstretched for government participation, to implement the will of the people, the will of Germany. We are ready to participate in government. Our hand is always outstretched to implement the will of the people.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats tumbled to third, his party's worst showing since the Second World War.
Last time, the election result was better and I had responsibility for that. This time, the election result is bad, and so I also bear responsibility for this result. I would like to say that at this point, for me, therefore, it is first and foremost important to congratulate the CDU/CSU, Christian Democratic Union/Christian Social Union parties, and the CDU chairman Friedrich Merz from here on the mandate to form the next government. Congratulations on the election result. / no cooperation with the extreme right. The Social Democratic Party stands by this clear course, and we hope and believe that all others will continue to show this attitude in the coming years.
Merz inherits an ailing economy, a society split over migration, and a country whose security is caught between a confrontational U.S. and an assertive Russia and China. His victory capped a campaign season roiled by a series of violent attacks and interventions by members of the U.S. Trump administration. They included Vice President J.D. Vance and tech billionaire Elon Musk, who showed forceful solidarity for the anti-migrant AfD, which has also criticized Germany's culture of Holocaust remembrance. Merz, who has shifted conservatives to the right, conditionally supports equipping Ukraine with longer-range Taurus missiles and sees Europe as firmly anchored in NATO. But he is heading into what are likely to be lengthy coalition talks without a strong negotiating hand. While his CDU and CSU sister party in Bavaria emerged as the largest bloc, it scored its second worst post-war result. It remains unclear whether Merz will need one or two partners to form a majority, but a three-way coalition would likely be much more unwieldy, hampering Germany's ability to show clear leadership. All of the mainstream parties have ruled out working with the AfD.
The main thing is to create a government in Germany that is capable of acting as quickly as possible, with a good parliamentary majority. Because, dear friends, the world out there is not waiting for us, and it is not waiting for lengthy coalition talks and negotiations. We must now quickly regain our ability to act so that we can do the right thing at home, so that we can be present in Europe again, so that the world realizes that Germany is being governed reliably again. That's what the conservatives stand for, that's what we stand for, and that's what I personally stand for.
If Merz is unable to form a coalition quickly, that could leave outgoing Chancellor Scholz in a caretaker role for months, delaying urgently needed policies to revive Europe's largest economy after 2 consecutive years of contraction and as companies struggle against global rivals. It would also create a leadership vacuum in the heart of Europe, even as it deals with a host of challenges, including Trump's threat of a trade war and attempt to fast-track a ceasefire deal for Ukraine without European involvement. Trump on social media Sunday hailed the election result as a, quote, great day for Germany, saying that its citizens, quote, got tired of the no common sense agenda, especially on energy and immigration.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. President Trump is spending his first weekend in the nation's capital under his new administration as sweeping changes unfold at the Pentagon with the removal of several top military leaders. Take a look. In an unprecedented move, President Trump has dismissed several of the nation's high-ranking military officials, including 4-star General Charles C.Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Trump called Brown a fine gentleman and an outstanding leader but provided no reason for the dismissal. The president has nominated 3-star Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Kane to replace General Brown, who served as a highly decorated fighter pilot with over 40 years of service. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth addressed the changes, and here's what he said.
And I have a lot of respect for C.Q. Brown. I got to know him over the course of a month. He's an honorable man, not the right man for the moment. A small group of insulated officers who perpetuate the status quo. Well, guess what? Status quo hasn't worked very well at the Pentagon. It's time for fresh blood. So we're going to open up those positions to a broader set in a merit-based process to find the best lawyers possible to lead the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. There's nothing about purging. There's nothing about illegal. We've made clear from the beginning, Shannon, the military will be apolitical with a fidelity to the Constitution, prepared to close with and destroy our enemies. One thing people haven't noted yet, which I'll share, is we're going to take, those are 3-star billets, but traditionally they've been 2-star billets over time. There's been lots of inflation in the ranks over time. We're going to return those billets to 2-star billets. We're going to shrink the size of our headquarters units.
The shakeup also included the removal of Navy Admiral Lisa Franchetti and Air Force Vice Chief of Staff James Life. Meanwhile, the Pentagon, as the government's largest employer, is preparing for significant staffing changes. At least 5,400 probationary employees are set to be terminated this week. President Trump addressed these broader government changes.
And I signed an order creating the Department of Government Efficiency. You probably haven't heard of it. Which is now waging war on government waste, fraud, and abuse. And Elon is doing a great job. He's doing a great job.
The administration is also calling on Tesla CEO Elon Musk to take a more aggressive approach to federal cuts. Federal employees have received emails requiring them to submit 5 bullet points detailing their weekly accomplishments, with responses due Monday evening. Shogun FX historical epic set in Imperial Japan claimed the prestigious Best Ensemble in a Drama TV Series award at Sunday's Screen Actors Guild Awards ceremony.
No sane man would want the papacy.
Vatican succession drama Conclave took home top film prize at the SAG Awards Sunday. It's a sign the movie's picking up steam ahead of next week's Academy Awards. Star Ralph Fiennes accepted the award for the cast while celebrating community in film as in life.
People have spoken so eloquently and movingly about community. I don't want to add more, but I think we do recognize the supreme importance of it in our work and in the world. We were a huge admiration to the other ensembles we've seen tonight. I think that's what we're celebrating, is our community. Thank you very much indeed.
Meanwhile, Timothée Chalamet scored Best Actor for his portrayal of a young Bob Dylan in biopic A Complete Unknown.
And I know we're in a subjective business, but the truth is, I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats. I'm inspired by the greats here tonight. I'm as inspired by Daniel Day-Lewis, Marlon Brando, and Viola Davis as I am by Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps, and I want to be up there.
And Demi Moore took home Best Actress for her starring role in body horror The Substance.
You know, there's this idea that what we believe is so much more powerful than what we think. And the saying that, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. But the reality is, when I believe it, I will see it. And I am so grateful for this. Thank you. That little girl who didn't believe in herself. There's just, the words are kind of beyond me. So I'm just going to have to just say thank you. Thank you so much.
Top TV honors went to samurai historical drama Shogun, while Selena Gomez accepted the top comedy award for the cast of Only Murders in the Building.
Wait, we never win. This is so weird. Okay, well, Marty and Steve aren't here because, you know, they don't really care.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.